This is Lawrence Lotz, and welcome to the Wolf of Queen Street. Welcome back to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast. But before we get straight in today's show, I just want to shout out to the studios that we are in at the moment. Campfire Studios, based in central part of Auckland. And it's a studio that provides facilities, a community, and not just a place where your voice can be heard, but trying to help the community by bringing us together, by launching us into the next area of producing our content creation, and everything else. So if you're in central part of Auckland or anywhere in Auckland and looking for a studio facility, Campfire Studios is the place to be. But to my guest today, Dom Harvey, to any Kiwi person, almost no introduction needed, but to anyone else out there that's listening or watching at the moment, broadcast game for over 20 years, just recently retired, pretty much find yourself in the sport of running. As a guy my size, I ask why and the logic behind that. Also, best-selling author with 3 different books, some curveballs in life, and something that resonates with myself, finding a tumor that's literally changed your life, your projection, something I want to get into a little bit later, your parenthood way as well, just recently in the last few years, and brought out to where you are today. I think when I look at it, a bit of a different person. But Dom, welcome to the show.
Hey, Lawrence, thanks. It's great to finally meet you in person. I've been following you online, and I was quite surprised when you asked me to come on your podcast, because I was like, a lot of your podcasts are like you giving property tips and things. I thought, oh shit, he's going to pick my brains about all my wonderful investments. But no, it's great to be here. I've made a commitment this year to go on. Like, if anyone asks me to go on a podcast, I'll go on it, because I'm in the same game, and I know it's a hustle out there. Yeah. And anyone that's doing that content creation, I respect it. Yeah,
totally. You're true. The last sort of 6 or 9 months, I've been really focusing the properties game to try and help New Zealanders and Kiwis get into that space, right? You either love it or hate it, unfortunately, in the New Zealand market. I also do as free mentorship, so I support people out there and coach them for free. But then I was like, great, I'm putting myself down that rabbit hole so deep. I'm missing out on all these amazing opportunities. And as I said to you off air, this is where this episode, as with one I recorded with John Maybury Jr. last week, is launching the Kiwiana business, strive, mental health sort of side of my brand that I'm trying to focus over the next 6 to 9 months. But we want to go back a little bit, Dom. It's just a bit of your backstory to anyone, like I said, that's listening that might not necessarily have grown up in New Zealand like myself, or is listening from overseas. A bit of your backstory and getting yourself into radio. If you just take our listeners a little bit through that.
Okay, well, I decided I wanted to be a radio broadcaster, in particular an on-air like DJ, announcer, call it whatever you want, when I was about, I suppose 12 or 13 years old. And we had like a school field trip to the radio station in Palmerston North. And the guy that was on air at the time, he just had like a little pair of shorts on and a shirt, and was smoking a ciggy in the studio and just like cranking some music. And it sort of blew my mind, because up until that point in life, like my perception of employment, I suppose, was seeing my dad grumpy every morning, putting a suit on, going to a job he fucking hated, then coming home and being grumpy at the end of the day until he had like that first beer to sort of calm down. So to see someone and this seems absurd now, because everyone's about work-life balance now, and but it just seemed like an epiphany to me in a way, and I thought, I want to be that guy. Minus the ciggies.
Minus the ciggies. It's totally. And I think there's something else you've mentioned on one of the shows done previously. You also found yourself not really in a space of any other opportunities, right? You didn't find yourself in sport teams. You didn't find yourself being picked in certain areas. So you sort of went, hey, this looks like something totally different, something that suits me. And you followed that thought pattern from your mind to go, hey, let's give that a go, because it's totally different to what I've seen at home, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, to their credit, my parents were always incredibly supportive. Like it's, I don't know, like we're talking, the 1980s in Palmerston North here, which is like a regional New Zealand town. So for your kid to say, I don't want to go to university, or I don't want to get a do an apprenticeship. I want to be a radio DJ. It's pretty fucking out there. And my parents were super supportive, and they were always like, very encouraging. Like, whatever you do, you can put your mind to. And they were dead right. And I was complete shit for the first. Well, some of my detractors may say for the first 30 years. But I was terrible at the beginning. So there's this job that I aspired for years and years and years, and I got it. And then you realise you suck at it. Yep. And that was devastating. And I knew like where I wanted to be, but I just didn't know how to get there. But eventually it sort of happened. And I think that's like persistence, tenacity, those sort of things.
And just going after what you want, right? And you seem like a person that's, you fire in and you say what you want to say and you go after it. And totally. So you throw yourself into the edge in, 2001, somewhere around that period?
2001. I was there in that same job 20 years.
Yeah, so 20 years, right? So that's pretty much, I was thinking about it this morning. A generation grew up with yourself, JJ, and the rest of the show, right, at the edge. And myself, I haven't been in New Zealand that long, but so that's when the sense of, I can imagine so many people around my age that, and I know this, either love or hate you, or love and hate the show, because there's been a few moments, right, of Dom, Harvey, the edge, and pushing the limit of what you guys did out there. Yeah. But take me through sort of that great journey of the unfiltered side of it, the freedom you guys had there. But obviously, you think back now, I know there's a few times you've spoken about it, going, if you said some of that stuff today.
Oh, you'd be cancelled immediately. Yeah. Well, 100%. And I suppose it's worth pointing out, like the Edge was a very, very innovative station. Like even before I started, and JJ was there a couple of years before I was. But we were encouraged to like think big and do big and push boundaries and stuff. And I suppose that was my role to a degree. Like, it's if you think of a 3-person radio show. Like say a TV show, say Friends, for example, you're not going to have 3 Joey Tribbianis. Yeah. So a radio show's sort of the same. So you need, at the time it was like JJ's she's most in line with the female target audience. There was Mike Perdue, who was like a nice guy, and me, who was like there to sort of shock a little bit and poke the bear a bit. Yeah. And I did it quite well, but it does come at a huge personal cost, because it's like, even though you are sort of playing a role and playing a character, it's your own name on it. So you need to own the things you say.
Did you, talking about playing the character, do you feel that you did play a character, or was it at that stage, was it close to where you are?
I don't know. I think the lines sort of blur after a while. Yeah. But yeah, definitely like a character. Like people would meet me at parties and stuff, and they'd be like, I'm actually quite shy and reserved. Like I don't need to be like the center of attention or, say provocative things. Yeah. So it was definitely more definitely more on anything. But I still, you still have to own that.
Looks like Dom's having a bit of a dilemma there to figure out where you fit into this. Was it, was it you, or was it the character? Where'd you come to it? Right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's a very, very interesting question. It's not something I've ever thought about, but I think that job, doing a breakfast radio show, can become all consuming. So the lines do sort of blur in a way.
And I totally, because I know, again, to anyone that's listening or watching, I make sure I stalk my guests. So there's always stuff I'm going back and having a look at. And I know there's something you're talking about it, and it was sort of the effect years and years down the path, which unfortunately was one of the big sticking parts between yourself and JJ, was the whole work together, live together, and it all becomes literally one entirety of itself, right? And if it is a persona or everything else, it's always on that almost like 100 miles an hour, right? That you go in and you got to switch it on and push it there. There's never sort of a separation between that sort of spaces as well.
Oh, absolutely. And hindsight's a completely wonderful thing. But I was going to say but I think we were both so driven and had this single-minded focus of wanting to do the best radio show in New Zealand that there was no shut-off. So there was no okay, we'll get home at 1 p.m. each day and that's it, no work. Yep. So we'd go home, we'd sit in our home office like on a table much like this, sitting opposite each other. So you'd end up just sort of talking about work all day with each other. So there was sort of no switch off, which is fine. But then, after a while, it's not healthy.
I've myself and my wife as my day job. We actually both do the same day job, and at a period we both worked at Sky TV, literally 5 meters away from each other. I was there for just over a year or so, and we made it work. But afterwards, we made an agreement going, we'd never work with each other. We'd never go take not because we weren't in each other's spaces, but that was totally true. We didn't have that separation, and it's just like, as a couple, as much as you want to be together, you also need the space, right?
You do, and also there's no like, how was your day today? It's like, you fucking know about you were there. So there's none of that.
And just the stepping away, and having that breathing space. And people don't realize in a relationship or even in society, sometimes we just need breathing space or space to do our own things, right? We're having a crappy day or a shitty day. We can go and be shitty and grumpy in the corner, and you sometimes need that without someone around you all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Is your wife New Zealand born, or is she South African?
New Zealand born.
How long have you been here?
2007. 2007. So permanently came over in 2007,
15 years. Shit, that accent doesn't get any softer, does it?
No, it doesn't. And if you put me around a few friends, it gets really thick and really fast.
Right.
Because South Africans are naturally quite fast talking. So I've got to be really conscious, especially on the show, to slow it down and think about my words. So when I'm at home, I just ramble off. Usually she turns around and goes, how do you produce content? You can't even get the words out your mouth. But I have to try when I'm there. And the same with yourself. You've been experienced being on the radio, right? You've got to really control and think about what you're saying before you just go blah out there, right?
I'm terrible with that. I feel like my brain works faster than my mouth, and I stutter and stammer my way through things. It's awful. But I can honestly say, just before we move on, and this isn't sucking up or anything. This is facts. I have never met a South African that I did not like.
Oh, that's good.
I think they're all fantastic. I've never been there, so I'm only talking about experience of South Africans I've met in New Zealand or other countries I've travelled to. I've never been to South Africa, but I think they're just the most wonderful people. And part of me wonders if the South Africans I've met in New Zealand, if they're all in good moods because they're happy to be here.
Funny enough, we spoke about that on a show that I was on just about a month ago, about that exact thing about South Africans coming over here and our culture and the reasons. And we went a little bit down, and I'm happy to chat about it now. You might find it interesting, Dom, in the sense of they asked me, like, what was the motivation? Because I was very drived in my backstory and stuff like that. And I said, well, in South Africa, you have to fight to survive. So you raised, and you either get consumed by society, or you try and fight. And by consumed by society, you either get taken by drugs, or you either get taken by violence. If you're not successful in some form, you just go below the breadline, and that's where you stay for your rest of your life. So you've got this massive drive of going 100 miles an hour, trying to just get ahead of normal. And then you jump on this side, and it was funny enough, my biggest thing, I came over here originally when I was 19 and played rugby at Remueros for college rifles my first year, and I was just this teenager raging, just wanting to go 100 miles an hour, and you get here and everyone's like, slow down. Right? Everyone's just like, slow down, dude. There's no race, right? And Kiwis are just like, slow down. And it's like, to me, it was this weird thing because at 20, Kiwis at 30, like, go, okay, cool. We want to know, couple, marriage, start lives there. In 20s, we just really relax. We in South Africans, we're like 20, want to get married at 21, have kids early. By 30, you establish and you make sure you got everything for your kids. And in New Zealand, you come in, it's just like, slow down.
No rush.
No rush.
Plenty to go around.
Plenty of time to go around. So that was...
do you think that's more like a Lawrence personality trait or a South African thing, like in general? Do you think it's...
Yeah, I think if you look at a lot of South Africans, sometimes we come across as outspoken and arrogant, just because we're naturally quite loud and we're unfiltered as well in the society we bring in. But a lot of people I know do have that drive sense. And then you come here, and then they do realize, look, it's amazing here, love it here. My parents are here as well. And the freedom that you have at the moment, New Zealand does feel a little bit like South Africa in the 90s. Let's just say shit's just going on a bit crazy in the last 6 months, all over the news every day at the moment. But it's a lot of drive from me, but I think a lot of South Africans do have still a bit of that drive and that motivation when they get out. And then sometimes they can switch it off. But my sort of genetics and way took a while, and my curveball and my brain tumor was the sort of thing that sort of said, okay, nah, you've got to slow down.
Yeah.
I'm going to force you to slow down, right?
Yeah.
And everything else.
It's funny how your body does end up telling you, like in some sort of form. I had, there's the former deputy leader of the National Party, Nikki Kay, who I had on my podcast a few weeks ago. She ended up with tapping out of politics after she got breast cancer. And there's no way of directly relating it, but she was working like 100-hour weeks. So in some way, a lot of the time, your body just ends up sending you a message. You're not going to slow down. I'll slow you down, motherfucker.
So let's get into your curveball then, right? So you obviously had quite a large surgery with your benign tumor that you found in your stomach and outrunning and stuff like that. Let's have a chat about that and talk me through. I know there was lead up and you weren't feeling it, and the day that actually happened that you're doing a race, right? The Auckland Harbour Marathon.
The Auckland Marathon. So I'd been, I'd recently started running again, and I'd just have these episodes where I'd go for a run, and if I tried some speed work, like try and run a bit faster than usual, or try and run up a hill at a faster than usual pace, I'd end up just being like on my hands and knees on the grass on the side of the road, like just vomiting, and I'd be like grey in the face, and then after like 5 or 10 minutes, I'd sort of come right and I'd walk home and I'd still look sick. And JJ, who I was married to at the time, she's like, you need to go to the doctor for this. And I was like, no, I'm just old and unfit. At the time, I was like 30 or something. So I look back now and I was just a dick. Like it was stupid. Of course I was unwell. But anyway, she ended up forcing me to go to a cardiologist, and we were sort of through the starting the testing, and they had an idea there might be something wrong, but they couldn't really pinpoint what it was. And then I was in the Auckland Marathon, and I was like 4Ks into it. So a marathon is 42 kilometres. So after, say, 30 kilometres, everyone feels like shit. Yep. If you feel shit at 4Ks into it, it's going to be a
long day.
It's a long day.
Day, right?
So I was having this feeling like 4Ks in that I'd had on some of these training runs, and there was a drink station and a St. John's ambulance. So I thought, it's going to fuck up my time, but I got to get this checked out. So I went and pulled over, and I explained to them what had been happening to me, and they did some blood pressure tests, and it was off the chart. The number's something over something. I can't remember exactly what, but it was like double what it should have been. So they made me lie down in the ambulance, and bear in mind, as I was saying before, after a few minutes you come right again, and then so I was like, I'll keep running, and then I'll come back once I've finished the run. I'll come back to hospital, and they're like, no, you need to lie down. Then they had the sirens on. It did seem a little unnecessary. So that was it, and then I was taken to hospital, and so I still had my running shirt on and my race number pinned to my shirt. And JJ on the same day was doing, I think, the 10-kilometre event. So she was still running at that point, so I couldn't get hold of her immediately. And then, finally she was reunited with her phone, and we spoke, and I just burst into tears, and that was it. That was me. I was in hospital for the next month while they were poking and prodding and doing tests. And it was a massive, massive tumour. It was like a 9-centimetre sort of ball, like a big grapefruit. And I wasn't overly. I had a bit of extra weight than what I had now, I guess, but there was, it was just sort of hidden, But they eventually found it. They removed it, and that was life changing. Suddenly, I realised it had been growing over like a period of years. So my health had progressively got worse, but because it happened so gradually, I didn't really realise it was happening. But little things like if I was driving in traffic and someone pulled in front of me, I'd just be like shaking straight away because this tumour was just like flooding my system with adrenaline. So something like that would happen. I'd be, it's amazing I didn't road rage anyway, So, and then as soon as it was taken out, I became quite chill. Yeah, it was like a completely different person, and running became easier, and life's been great.
Do you think it changed where you were before that? Do you think the person that existed before the tumour wasn't Dom?
For a time, I was probably angrier or more jumpy, and just as a result of just having this, my system flooded with adrenaline. But when it was taken out, I don't know if I changed too much. No, I'm trying to think of the stuff that we did like on the radio before the tumour and after the tumour.
I'm not worried as much about the radio. I'm worried about you, right? I know what you do on the radio because, I mean, the radio is still a persona, right? And you still got to keep that edge and you're right. And all the rest of it, I'm just asking you at home, and have you ever thought about it? I know with my brain tumour and that, I know who I am today and where I was 4 years ago are two totally different people. So I'm wondering if people, if yourself that's gone through it very similar, found it very quickly, had to have it removed, triggering hormone things. Mine triggered all my hormones as well. Do you think it had a bit of play of who you were and who you are now?
I guess I've never really thought about that, but it must have in some way. I mean, I'd like to think each and every one of us are changing all the time. So if someone says to you, "Oh, you've changed," I'd normally take that as a compliment, because I think if you're not changing, then it's not good. Like, we should all be changing and evolving all the time. But it's hard to say what part having that tumour and having that tumour removed played in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because at the moment I totally feel that you're resonating more with the world as looking for the world as a better place and trying to strive it towards a better place, which is something I see from a lot of people that come out of it, myself as well. From that situation, I got humbled down to the ground, and now I give away my time for free and helping yourself fine and running, but you launching your podcast that's out there at the moment, doing everything else and trying to make the world a better place, right? And it's funny because I looked at it and went, it feels very similar to what I went through, and I'm just really intrigued.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels. Yeah, I feel I feel really proud about what I'm doing with the podcast, and the podcast platform and space allows you to have those conversations, and things that you just can't do on the radio. When you do things on a radio, like, it's got to go through like a bunch of filters, like does it fit our target audience? You can't have long conversations though either. It's got to be like a 5-minute chat. So it's like a radio interview is. It's almost like a performance act. So you have a chat with Ed Sheeran. You want to ask a question. He's hopefully got a funny answer. Hopefully there's something in there that's going to be a headline that goes viral on TMZ or whatever. But podcast, it allows you to have these more meaningful conversations, and I love that. Yeah.
Now I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with you. Talk to me about the condition.
Mate, you go as deep as you want. You go balls deep if you want.
Let's go about your condition, right? From the tumour. So I know there's a name to it. That after you had your tumour removed, it pretty much almost prevented you from becoming a father.
Yeah, I did completely. Yeah, so I can't tell you. I should have this committed to memory. I don't know what the name of the tumour is. It's like 17 syllables long.
Mine was the same. That's why it's just called brain tumour.
But you have some people that have like medical conditions and they're completely in touch with what they had, and I'm like, I don't know. It was a bloody.
I agree with that one.
But it left me with a condition called retrograde ejaculate. I can remember that. So it basically means when I have sex, everything functions and feels the same as normal, but just there's no orgasm at the end. And the surgeon that took the tumour out, so he came in to see me a couple of days after the operation while I was recovering. And so bear in mind, he was a very good surgeon and potentially saved my life, but he knew nothing about IVF or fertility. And he just said to me, he goes, the way technology is at the moment, it's easy as, you just need to go to a clinic, they'll harvest your sperm and then, you'll have a baby. But that started like a 10-year IVF fertility journey with JJ and myself, and we had round after round after round of IVF with no success. Yeah. And
do you think it was all to play from your side? I know it's something hard that you look back on.
Well, yeah, 100. Well, I mean, there's no way of knowing. Like JJ's never been like pregnant before, so there's no way of knowing. But I'd say so. Like it was, I ended up infertile after this tumor and this operation, and I still, I think, carry quite a big amount of sort of guilt and shame about that, if I'm being honest.
For yourself or for both?
Mainly, well, I feel bad. Maybe not so much for maybe more for JJ. That like she like I had to go through fuck all. Like I had a couple of operations called testicular biopsies where it's probably much like getting a vasectomy. They cut into your scrotum and remove some tissue and get the sperm out that way. But she had to inject herself in the stomach for like days and days on end. I think like a month leading up to each round of IVF to like increase her hormones and produce more eggs or whatever. So she had to go through a lot, and she didn't even really like. She sort of had no maternal instincts, like no sort of desire to be a mum or have kids of her own. So she did that like out of love for me, really, and I feel terrible about that. That it was my issue, but she had to do all the work. I mean, I would if I could, but it just wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't possible. So there's huge amount of guilt in that, and then a huge amount of guilt in that. Probably like being back to this like persistence and tenacity thing we were talking about before. It was the same sort of thing. It was like we'd have a failed round, then I'd be like, all right, well no time like the present. Let's just book in again as soon as we can. Mm-hmm. So we were just like constantly on this treadmill, like moving forward, like eye on the prize. Yeah. And it's only when you give up and then you have time to sort of reflect and look back. It was a hell thing to go through. Mm-hmm. I suppose like anyone that goes through it, it's probably a hell thing to go through. But if you end up with a baby at the end, or you're like, okay, well, was it worth it? Yes, it was. Yeah. But when you go through all this and the amount of time and money and pain and stress that we went through, and then at the end it was fruitless. Yeah. It eats me up.
Yeah, it will be hard for any couple, any person to go through that. And I can imagine with yourself, right? And you've seen that she's willing to go through all that for, you said it wasn't maternal. And I'm going to say a bit of a comment now. They will love me or hate me, and people listening might do the same. But for almost for your selfishness, right? You wanted this for your selfishness to be a father, and you pushed, unfortunately, all the hardship on her, and she gave it, did it the best, and it didn't happen. And a real crazy question, right? Real hard one. Do you think you deserved that?
How do you mean?
Do you think you deserved that part of what happened there was what? There's weird people out there who say that, and that's what you get. You weren't going to ever be a father. This was your path. This was your life. Do you think that was the path to take you through to where you are today?
Well, I suppose so. Yeah, I've got more like philosophical, and in my older age, and you realise that everything happens for a reason, and everything's taking you somewhere. So I've become more philosophical about that. But it's still one of those things. It's like, I mean, I can't complain about it or grizzle about it, because life is still amazing. And it's like, if I'm on a plane and someone's dealing with a screaming baby, or, I'm in the supermarket and some kid's like having a full-on tantrum on the floor because they're not allowed a Kinder Surprise, I think, thank fuck that's not me. But then there's other aspects of your life that you realise that you saw playing out a certain way, and they're not going to play out that way anymore. Like, having kids and watching them grow up and all the trials and tribulations that come with that, and then maybe one day becoming a grandparent. So it's like, it's weird. It's just the way, I suppose, you saw your life. You suddenly have to pivot and realize it's not gonna look like that anymore. Yeah,
I totally resonate with that. Like I said, with my own story. Have
you got kids?
Yeah, I've got 2 young kids, or not young. My daughter's just turned 14. My boy turns 11 next week. But due to my side effects, I can't have kids. If I wanted to, I can't have kids from this point forward. So you want to hear something really, really strange and weird? Yeah, a bit of a twisted way. So South African, drive to have young family, get started and get going with life, right? So I married when I was 21, kids, both my kids in my early 20s. In the New Zealand way, it would have been, married later in my 20s, waited till my 30s to have kids. If I waited to that stage, I wouldn't have had kids. I wouldn't have been able to have kids. Because they found that my brain tumor had been growing for at least 10 years, what the expectation was, and related to sports injuries, and they couldn't pinpoint exactly, but I believe it to my rugby career and multiple concussions and other injuries, and likely foreseen CTE diagnosis by the time I'm dying in my 60s, 70s, or 80s, right? Because unfortunately, CTE is not fun for anyone out there. But yes,
so what's CT?
So CTE is another medical condition that very long term. Anyone that's out there listening or watching, please drop it below. I can never pronounce it, but it's pretty much what they've defined in the NFL from the continuous head knocking.
Okay.
So a lot of what you see the guys now with the Alzheimer's and the isn't Cole Hammond soon?
Heyman.
Yeah, I don't believe he has, but
he's got dementia.
Yeah, so that all leads in. That's all from CTE. So like the dementia, suicide, the aggression, all of that's from the continuous head knocking over the sports careers. There was a book and a movie done by Will Smith called Concussion that followed the doctor in America that went and showed this and diagnosed the CTE and had to take to the NFL. They never agreed that it existed, and then actually brought it out. And now it's becoming more popular, but you can only diagnose CTE when the person dies, when you actually, unfortunately, open up their brain and see the condition.
Okay.
But it makes a lot of sense when you look at some of the big impact in sports and you look at the sports stars, guys and girls that go off the radar when their career ends, when they go into, Alzheimer's, depression, suicide. It's crazy in the last sort of 10 years how many sports stars we've lost to suicide, and you go and you look at it and go and can't understand the logic behind it. They've had this career or the rest of it, and then where's it come from it? There's a lot of correlation between that and the CTE diagnosis.
Wow. So do you think you might have it?
I think that already my memory comes into play quite a bit at the moment. So I definitely think dementia is going to come into play earlier, in the sense that as you get older, as you get into your 30s or into your 40s, you can't remember the first 10 years of your life, right? Sort of, it catches up to you, right? It comes slowly behind. You can remember like instances when you were 6 or 8 or 10. And so as you pass down, sort of it catches up. And then as you get to a certain age, it comes quicker. Where I find it, and I'm getting close to 40, so I'm still young in beans into my perspective. I got moments I can't remember in my 20s. I got trips that I've done with my family 5 years ago, and I've got to go to the wife going, did we do that? Where did we go? She's like, and I'm like, are you sure? And I'll literally just agreed so that I'm agreeing in the conversation with the wife, not disagreeing, right? Yeah. And that's where the thought pattern is that the memory. So in my day job, I'm great. I mean, this scene, I'm also great, but there'll be moments that I still can't remember actually happening or going on, and it's just that memories. I can feel it catching real quicker than it should be. So that's where I've already seen my wife going, I'm sure that if we plan that I'm in my mid-60s, dementia's going to be, if I don't get it, I'll be surprised.
Was there any exercises you can do, like to make the best of a bad situation?
Yeah, there should be, there will be, and being a guy, am I looking into them? Likely not. Right?
Yeah,
right?
You wait until it's too late.
Yeah, correct. We both waited till too late, right?
Touché.
So yes, I need to spend more time of it, and this sort of year was a big realization where I'm starting to try and be more advanced with my brand and everything else. I'm trying to do more things, doing more things there, and then you go, hold on. Did I speak to that person? And it's like, I struggle. I've always struggled to remember names, but I really struggle to remember people's names. So it's like, even now with us talking, I've had to look down a couple of times to remember that you're Dom Harvey. Even though you're sitting in front of me and we've spoken, right? That's the sort of stuff that triggers me going, there's more coming.
Right.
And it's not going to be great.
Shit.
So, yeah. So, and that's why it's just, going out there, chatting and doing all this sort of stuff. But I want to bring it back because we're talking a bit about me now, and this is about Dom, right?
Yeah, I've realised this is something
as a podcaster you
from
do,
years
right?
of radio, and also I think it's a deflection thing because you're more comfortable being the interviewer rather than the interviewee.
Dom's trying to deflect because I try to go deep there about Historia,
No, seriously, we can go as deep as you want.
No, by all means, it's great. So, look here, I know running's always been a big part of what you are now and you stand for, and something that was obviously quite big a good few years ago was raising money for someone came on the talk show that their child needed a cancer treatment, and again, the money's level of that was way out of bounds for any normal couple, and you made a decision on the air that said, hey, I'll run 5 marathons in 5 days to help fund money for charity, right?
Yeah, that was
for cancer treatment. Sorry, not for charity.
Man, that was one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. Like, it was this young girl called Kaolani Forbes who was preschool age and had basically had cancer her entire life. And we met her parents, and They were just like, they were like washed out. Like they'd remortgaged their house. They'd done charity night fundraisers. Like absolutely, they'd exhausted every financial mean they could. And the only thing left, like the New Zealand health system was basically shrugging their shoulders saying there's nothing more we can do. But they found a treatment in Barcelona in Spain, which was going to cost like $250,000. So we, I suggest I do this thing, 5 marathons in 5 days, which is, marathon's 42K, so it's 210 kilometres. I didn't know if I'd be able to do it or not, but it's amazing. Like the mind's a very powerful thing, and if you're running for like a higher purpose or something other than yourself, it's amazing what you can achieve. But we had no way of knowing like how many of our radio listeners would donate money, or I mean, even if we only raised 50 grand or whatever, it would have been nice, but it's not going to get them to Barcelona, is it? In the end, we got like just the right amount. It's like $250,000. And it started really slow, and before the event started, like our promotions team were trying to get businesses on board, and it was really hard. But then the momentum sort of built as the week of the 5 marathons in 5 days carried on, and it was just it was amazing. And I'm still Facebook friends with them, and we still message each other, and it saved her life in a way. Like she still has massive health complications that are ongoing, and she will do. And no one knows how long she's going to survive or be around for, but she's still here now, and that's amazing. It was an incredible thing to be a part of.
And I'll take my hat off to you, man, just for that idea coming out. I don't know if it was a packaged idea or if you just did it ad lib on the radio to come up with the idea to help raise it, but there's someone around today because of a decision you and a group of people had made, and you put yourself out there not knowing you could do it and everything else, and massive props to you for that, and for the team and for everyone else, and for the community and all of New Zealand that got behind that, because we need more of that. Yeah, we need more of that, and a massive shout out to you for doing that, man. A lot of people. The worst of all about it is, like I said, is I look back and I think it's an inspiration in what you do it. A lot of Kiwis will grow up with you being on the edge, and I know you might. I think you've spoken about this before, that some people love you on one side of the coin and hate you on the other side of the coin, but because you're doing something great, they won't flick their coin over, right? And it's frustrating, right? Persona out there, and it's like we're still trying to help people and make a difference. Forget if I'm an arsehole. We're helping that person, right? We're helping that person.
I don't know. It's probably worth pointing out, like that was like I was never the most talented. As I said, when I started in radio, I was shit. I mean it. This isn't false modesty or anything. I was really shit, and I was devastated because it's what I wanted to do. So I sort of studied the art of radio, and I realised if you look at all New Zealand's most successful broadcasters, and again, it's a bit different because I was on music radio. All New Zealand's most successful broadcasters, there's been a guy called Paul Holmes, who there's Mike Hosking at the moment, and there's Paul Henry, and they all have one thing in common: they're all polarising. You love them or you hate them. So I realised early on, right, if I'm going to be, I don't have the natural talent or charisma or charm of other people, so I need to be polarising. I need people to have an opinion on me, whether it's good or bad. And I think I did that quite well. But you're never going to, sometimes people form an opinion and they're never going to change it. But I found out after the run thing, it's like, it definitely bought you a little bit of leeway with some people. Like, you'd say something dicky on the air after that, and people would be like, "Oh, but he did do that cancer run."
That's gonna run out after a while, right? It's gonna in about another 5 years, because you're doing the podcast game right now, and you can say what you want to say, whichever way you want to go, right? You're gonna get to the point that they're gonna be like, "Oh, Jesus, Dom, he's going down that path. He's gonna have to do something good, right? And do good for charity, right?" So
it's all about it's kind of all about what you're doing now. You can only live on your past glories for so long.
So the podcast, where and what to from this point at the moment? Obviously, you've spoken quite a bit about enjoying doing it because you've got your own control, your own audience, longer form. Speak about in depth where you want to go. What's the strive behind that?
How do you mean? What's the strive?
Like where do you want to go with it? Where do you want to go next with it?
Well, I want it to be as big as what it possibly can. I want it to be like a financially viable, like career or venture or whatever you want to call it. I want it to be like a business with some staff and cameras like this. Hi. What? There's a camera. There's a camera. Oh, there's another camera.
These angles are going to be amazing.
Yeah, I just want it to be. I don't really know. I'm on like a journey with it, and I don't know where it's gonna end up. But I've just found in life, if you work hard and you're consistent, then things just sort of happen. I don't know. I've never been like a huge sort of goal setter.
Yeah.
I don't know. I felt bad saying that too because I feel like I should be, but it's like I've just found if you do something you love, it doesn't feel like work, and if you work hard, then things just end up automatically happen.
It's awesome, man. But the show is doing amazing. I've had a look at some of the short form content you're producing out there and listen to the audio as well. Your studio is close to almost being complete. I know you're really excited about that, and it's coming along. And I know you're really proud about your rankings and everything else, and being top out there. Any podcast that look at, don't act all sheepish. Even myself from the beginning part, rankings and reviews was amazing to see that and see all the traction. It is pretty cool, but. Yeah, maybe one day you become the Joe Rogan of New Zealand and Spotify buys you and pays you whatever. What did Spotify pay?
Like 100 million,
right?
Yeah.
And then did you see what happened as soon as Spotify hired Joe Rogan? Half the company turned around and said they need to get rid of him because half the company didn't agree with Joe Rogan's political views.
Oh, right. But they yeah, I did see something about that. But he's still on Spotify though.
Oh, they're right.
Yeah.
What the problem was, the big hedge honcho said, "Hey, he's amazing. You love him or you hate him. He's so massive. We're going to get him on the show." Signed the contract, and then the whole workforce went, "Hold on, we don't actually like what he stands for." So yeah, there was a big time where they were looking at almost booting him off, but he was so powerful they couldn't.
Yeah, I've always found that funny. This is the thing on radio as well. It's like. If you don't like it, you don't have to listen.
Yeah, you can go to another station.
Fine. Yeah, you don't want to listen to Rogan. Don't listen to Rogan. But why are these people like hell bent on like other people not listening?
Yeah.
It's a funny thing, but he's done particularly well. And I think everyone, when you think of podcasts, you think of Joe Rogan, and everyone that starts up an interview style podcast probably has aspirations, whether they say it or not, to be like Joe Rogan. But he's been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
Long, like over 10 years. Yeah. He's done the work, man.
I listened to his first 500 episodes as my research to start podcasting. I went and spent a year and went through 500 of his episodes. We actually spoke about it last week with the John Maybury interview, and how laughing and looking back of producing video form of it, and looking back at your own career path and how you started day one and how different it is, you know, a year down and 2 years and 3 years and 4 years down, and how I joked or I laughed on his very first episode. Him and Brian Redband sit there on the video, and then they add snowflakes. And then the ad filters on. I shit you not. If you go and find the first episode of Joe Rogan's podcast, it is him and Brian Redband going, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Look, the snowflakes could come over him and all this, and then light and then changing." That was the first episode. Them just tweaking all the settings goes, "Oh, how good can this be, right?"
Yeah.
And then how the life's gone. But yeah, he's been in it for such a long time. But he's also, his knowledge, irrespective of his opinion on things, his knowledge is literally ridiculous. It's like Jordan Peterson's knowledge and how he can do an interview as well. It's just amazing. And some days I don't want to be Joe, but I wish I had his brain to be able to consume all of that and produce that on the spot, where he talks about in depth in every single different topic that there is.
I feel like some of that must have come from, first of all, he must have a very good memory, but a lot of it's probably just come a lot of it must have come from just having these amazing in-depth conversations with these amazing, knowledgeable people over the years. Yeah, but he's just retained some of the info.
Yeah, but 3 hours, 3 times a week for like 10 years, a normal human can't consume that much knowledge, right? And keep it in. That's just a weird one with him. But anyway, so.
But he, I mean, everyone talks about the Spotify deal and the 100 million or whatever, but like how many years was he doing this with no attention, no lights on him, no money coming in, just for the love of podcasting? Probably. Oh,
I would have been, I think, first 3 or 4 years. So if you go back like I did from day one, and he did Joey Diaz like 30 times over, and Bert Kreischer and all his comedian friends, and that's how he folded, right? That's how he folded the episodes till he slowly started getting like people outside of his comedic circle, right? So he literally did Joey still comes on now because Joey Diaz is Joey Diaz and he's psycho and crazy and he will say what he wants. I mean, he was talking about smuggling drugs and his nutsack, right? And Joey's like, don't say it. And he's like, I don't care. I'm going to say it and explain how he got through the airport with cocaine tied to his nutsack, right? But yeah, so for the first couple of years, he just filled it 90% of just his friends as they learned and got bigger. And he got the random guest and the random guest. And then as it slowly built, he would get bigger names and bigger names. And then it just became to where it is today of, I can imagine how if Joe phones you and goes, hey, you want to be on the show, you got to get to wherever he's filming and wherever he's based now in 24 hours. You're like, yep, I'm on the first plane. I'll get there. You won't say no to that man because he will make your career to be on his show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Like when Oprah Winfrey was at her peak, like if she endorsed your product or your book or whatever, it's going to go straight to the top of the New York Times bestseller list.
Yep. And stay there for a while.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Rogan. He's got such a massive audience.
Yeah, totally. But before we end off today's episode, is there anything else interesting you want to leave our audience with and some insights or something about Dom Harvey, where you are at the moment, or something that's of interest in that they might want to hear from you?
No, I'm so uninteresting. I don't know. Not really. I feel like you've unearthed some good stuff today. You've definitely made me think about some things. Mm-hmm. It's quite. Yeah. I suppose because of my broadcast history and because I'm new to podcasting, when I do a podcast with someone else such as yourself, I take away some stuff, and I thought you picked up on some really good stuff. There were some things that I had to think about before answering. I think that's a real credit to yourself.
Oh, thanks for that so much for that, Dom. And it's something I always try and pay attention to see how you react and everything else, and try to push the point to a certain point. And sometimes there's good things. Sometimes, like you said in radio, right? You've got to try and find that nugget or that piece that someone will pick up. And with podcasting, you don't have to make it your force or your main focus, but sometimes that's the really cool piece. And in short form content, in the social media world, that's the 60-second clip that might make it, go viral on TikTok or Instagram and everything else out there these days. But thanks again, Dom, for coming on the show. Much appreciated. I know you're a bit surprised that I reach out, but I loved your story so much, and I hope my audience out there resonates with what you have to say and everything you've done. And but the main thing is, obviously, any New Zealanders will know where to reach out to you, but anyone else that might not know who you are, how can they find you? How can they reach out to you?
Wherever you get your podcast from, just search Dom Harvey and you'll find it, or Dom Harvey NZ on Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome.
Slide into my DMs. Oh, the light's off. We're gone.
He's gone back to there. Thanks so much for that, Dom. As always, thanks for coming over to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast. As I say, I'm not interested to shout out and say, hey, do I like or subscribe if you like the show? I do not care about those things. What I do care about is what I spoke about, Dom, a little bit earlier today about stuff is people out there might need more help. People out there might need us to reach out to say, are you okay? How's things going? And our society needs us to stand together more and more today. So if this episode resonated with you, do one action today for me. Go to someone you care about. Reach out to someone that you thought about or you haven't spoken to a while. And it's as easy as saying, how you doing? Or I'm sorry. Or can we catch up for a cup of coffee? That's all I care about from you guys from today. But at the end, thanks for coming over. Hope you stay beautiful. Hope you stay powerful. Until next time, see ya.
But also like and subscribe.